Alright folks, strap on your seatbelts because we're blasting off to the future. Or to be more precise, into the world of Futurama. Developed by Matt Groening, Futurama is an animation powerhouse that follows our main protagonist, Philip J. Fry, a 20th century pizza delivery boy who accidentally gets frozen for 1,000 old years. Now in the future, he becomes a delivery boy yet again, but this time for an interplanetary delivery company, the Planet Express. The show has a lot of exciting and strange characters, and I mean a lot. Just to start though, we have Fry's one-eyed mutant girlfriend, Tarangalila. Initially believed to be an alien, she's the captain of the Planet Express ship and is a good roundhouse kicker. Next up, we've got Fry's best pal, the most badass robot, Bender Bending Rodriguez. He's a cigar-smoking, foul-mouthed robot who's got the urge to bend anything and steal everything. Apart from them, there are a lot of other characters in the show, which we will cover soon. Grab some popcorn and Slurpees as we kick things off with episode 1 of season 1, Space Pilot 3000. The episode starts off with the new millennium right in the corner in the year 1999. We got our main man, Philip J. Fry, who's not exactly living his dream life, working as a pizza delivery boy. He hops on his bike to make his rounds and spots his girlfriend Michelle cruising in a cab with some random dude, pissing him off. Not only does she dump him, she even makes fun of him.
I hate my life, I hate my life, I hate my life.
He reaches the delivery location and waits for I.C. Wiener to show up. But Mr. Wiener, in fact, does not show up. He cracks open a beer to toast the coming new millennium. As the countdown ends, he leans back and accidentally falls into a cryogenic pod. The pod closes, and next thing you know, he's frozen for a cool 1,000 years. Now, fast forward to December 31st, 2999. He finally comes out of his sleep. Instead of freaking out, Fry is all Yahoo! As he no longer has to do his lousy job. Right then, a guy named Terry enters and sends him to the Fate Assignment Officer Leela, who tells him his career assignment is delivery boy. But our boy isn't buying it. He bolts out of the office with the alien girl right after him. While running around the city, Fry stumbles into a phone booth and meets a robot, Bender. He enters the phone booth only to find out that the booth is actually a suicide booth. They team up, and with some quick reaction skills, they make it out. Bender invites Fry for a drink, but Leela catches up and corners them in a museum with a lot of talking heads. Yikes. Kinda creepy. The duo escape into the ruins of old New York, which makes Fry nostalgic, but the trip down memory lane is cut short when Leela catches up to them yet again. However, this time, Leela opens up about being alone, being the only one-eyed alien on the planet. She decides to ditch her job and remove her own career chip to tag along with Fry and Bender. Finally, they track down Fry's really great nephew, Professor Hubert Farnsworth, a full-time mad scientist. Farnsworth is initially skeptical of Fry, but after a quick test, he believes that Fry is actually his uncle. The cops track them down and force them to come out. But instead of coming quietly, they escape in Farnsworth's spaceship. As fireworks light up the sky, Fry is thrilled and asks if they'll be fighting space monsters and teaching alien women to love. But the professor crushes his dreams by explaining that they'll be delivering cargo across the universe. In other words, Fry is going to be a delivery boy yet again. The episode ends with Fry being all pumped up as the spaceship soars through space for their next mission. Episode 2, The Series Has Landed, starts off with Fry, Bender, and Leela officially joining the Planet Express as Professor Farnsworth introduces their new team. First up, we've got Hermes Conrad, a Jamaican bureaucrat who's all about paperwork. Next, we've got Dr. Zoidberg, the resident quote-unquote doctor who is actually completely clueless. And then there's Amy Wong, an intern from Mars whose family is so insanely rich that they can buy a whole freaking planet. Sorry, Elon, you've been outmatched. Professor Farnsworth makes Leela to captain the ship, and their first mission is to make a delivery to the moon. And oh boy, Fry's all excited as he's about to make his first visit to the moon. But the excitement doesn't last very long. Traveling to the moon is as easy as catching a bus in the 21st century. When they arrive, he's greeted by a long queue at Luna Park, which is a cheesy Disney-esque amusement park built on the moon.
That's one small step for Fry,
and one giant line for admission.
After seeing this, Fry wants to go on a small tour exploring the park, but Leela refuses as they have a job to do. After finishing their delivery, they explore the amusement park, which is filled with only boring stuff. Fry's not vibing with it at all. He's here for the real moon, not for the phony stuff. Hearing this, Leela takes Fry on a lunar rover ride, which doesn't go as planned. Unfortunately, the duo fall into moon quicksand, and with no other option, Leela uses their oxygen to escape from the pit, which practically drains all their supply. As they continue, Fry and Leela stumble upon a hydroponic farm run by a grumpy old lunar farmer who introduces his daughters, Lulu Bell 7, Daisy May 128K, and the Crushinator. Sick names, dude. He agrees to give them oxygen, only if they help out with chores. While Fry and Leela are working on the chores, Bender arrives and flirts with the robot daughters. However, this does not sit well with the farmer, and he chases the group off. They manage to escape from the farmer, oxygen in hand. However, nightfall is coming, which means it's going to be super cold. They rush to find a safe spot and come across the Apollo 11 landing site. They take shelter in the lander, and Fry apologizes to Leela for dragging her into this mess. He further explains that he just wanted to see the real deal, not some knockoff Disney theme park. Leela finds his passion he has for the moon to be quite beautiful. Before things get too sappy though, Bender runs towards them with the angry farmer hot on his tail. Luckily, Amy swoops both Bender and the lander and flies them back to Earth. The episode ends with Leela asking Fry if this is the moon that he dreamed of, to which Fry replies, close enough. Moving on, Love's Labor's Lost in Space. For this episode, we see Fry, Leela, and the rest of the crew hit up the hip joint to help Leela find a suitable date after her last date with a lizard tongue guy went horribly wrong. Spoiler alert, Leela isn't vibing in the nightclub either. They head back to their HQ and the professor announces their new mission, which is a rescue operation on planet Vergon 6. The professor further explains that the whole planet was mined for 25 years. Technically making it a giant space donut, and it's gonna collapse in 3 days. So Fry, Bender, and Leela are tasked with saving 2 animals of every species. As they near the planet, they find Zap Brannigan's ship, and Leela immediately recognizes it. Brannigan is a highly decorated captain, so the trio decide that he would be a big help. At first, Brannigan treats the trio very well, and even organizes a banquet. But once he hears about their travel to Vergon 6, he arrests them under Brannigan's law. Well, that was quick. However, Brannigan is infatuated by Leela and wants to spend some time with her, so he sends Kif to get his lady love and tries to seduce her. At first, Leela pushes back, but eventually caves after seeing how pathetic he is, something which will haunt her later on. She wakes up next to Brannigan and slowly tries to sneak out of the room. The trio then head to the planet and begin picking up the strange-looking animals one after the other. As Leela checks them off the rescue list, she stumbles upon a small creature with a third eye. She immediately takes the little guy as her pet, calling him Nibbler. She puts Nibbler along with the other animals, and unbeknownst to the crew, Nibbler munches all the captured creatures one by one. The trio return to the ship only to find that Nibbler has devoured every single one. To make matters worse, the ship is out of fuel. It seems like their only option is to call Zap Brannigan. Just in the nick of time though, Nibbler does the unthinkable and excretes a small ball of dark matter, which surprisingly works as fuel for their spaceship. Bender quickly grabs the pellet, tosses it into the engine, and they zap away from the imploding planet. Ooh. That was a close one. Alright, the next episode, A Fish Full of Dollars, kicks off with Fry having a bizarre dream where he's stuck in an ancient Egyptian class only wearing his underwear. And as you'd expect, the whole class is laughing at him. However, it turns out to be a commercial dream for this fancy underwear Lightspeed briefs. The next day, Fry and the rest of the crew go to the mall to get Fry his dream undies. However, there's one problem. He's broke. Not to worry though, he's got his old 20th century bank account, but it only has 93 cents in it. Bummer. Hold on though. Since the money's been chillin' for 1,000 years, the measly 93 cents is now a whopping $4.3 billion. So what does any normal man who suddenly gets a lot of money do? Blow it on stuff that isn't important at all, obviously. And so Fry buys the Mona Lisa only to blast it off. You know, typical rich people stuff. While having a snack at Cosmic Ray's Pizza, Fry orders a pizza with anchovies. As it turns out, anchovies went extinct after Zoidberg's kin ate them all. But Fry will have his pizza topping, and manages to find some up for auction. Here, we're also introduced to a new character, Mom, an industrialist who is loved by many.
Oh my God, it's Mom!
That's quite rare, and she's got a serious interest in Fry's anchovies, believing the fish oil poses a threat to her robot oil business. Despite her continuous bid, Fry ends up winning. Mom is committed to getting her hands on these anchovies, so she sends her sons, Walt, Larry, and Ignar, on a mission to steal Fry's ATM card along with the pin to make him bankrupt. They successfully knock him out and trick him into blurting out his pin. After wiping his bank account, they throw Fry in front of his house. He finds his newly bought assets taken away, including Ted Danson's skeleton. Not the skeleton, but he's still got the anchovies, and returns back to Planet Express. However, much to everybody's surprise, Mom shows up too. She tries to buy the anchovies from Fry by promising to give back his money, but Fry simply refuses, and tells her that he's gonna eat it on a pizza. Hearing this, Mom leaves, knowing that once they're gone, so is the threat to her business. Fry throws a pizza party, only for the Planet Express crew to spit the anchovies out. Right then, Zoidberg arrives, and the heavenly stench makes him lose his mind and devour the pizza like a madman as he screams, "More! More! More! More!" Moving on to episode 12, When Aliens Attack. We're back in the past, with Fry doing a regular pizza delivery to WNYW. But Fry accidentally spills the beer, which knocks single female lawyer off the air. He dismisses it with, "Like anyone on Earth cares." But little did he know, someone not from Earth definitely cares a lot.
This is an outrage!
Now, back to the 31st century Earth, the Planet Express crew are on a trip to Monument Beach where all the great monuments of Earth have been gathered by a supervillain governor. But their chill beach day doesn't last long, as the Omicronians, led by their ruler, Lur, destroys all the monuments and demands that the humans hand over McNeil. The president of the Earth, President McNeil, panics, thinking they mean him, and orders Zap Brannigan to lead a counterattack. After their epic failure of a defense, Brannigan heads back to Earth and decides to just hand over President McNeil. Lur vaporizes the president and tells Brannigan that they've got the wrong McNeil. He shows him a picture of the real McNeil, which Fry immediately recognizes as Jenny McNeil from Single Female Lawyer. The Planet Express crew start looking for the episode, only to find that all the videotapes were destroyed during the second coming of Jesus. Yeah, I'm serious, I'm not making this up. So, with no other option, the crew puts on a makeshift low-budget version of the show. They start the show, and Leela improvises a shocking twist where the single female lawyer proposes to the judge. Fry is pissed off and tells her that TV audiences don't like clever or sudden plot twists. Lur agrees, and threatens to destroy the world if they don't fix this hiccup. Seeing this, Fry throws together an ending where the judge dies, leaving Jenny as a single female lawyer once again. The Omicronians, finding this acceptable that the lawyer with the world's shortest skirt is still single, and decide to spare the Earth, rating the show a C+. The episode comes to an end with Fry getting back onto the couch, saying everything's back to normal, as the camera pans out to reveal New York completely in ruins. Yep, completely normal. Now moving on to season 2 with the episode I Second That Emotion. Leela and the rest of the crew are celebrating Nibbler's 5th birthday. However, Bender's not thrilled with Nibbler getting all the attention. Not only that, Bender's assigned to bake a cake for Nibbler, which only infuriates him even more. So what does he do? He flushes the furball down the toilet. Yeah, he really did that. And Leela can't believe it. They say a final goodbye to Nibbler by flushing a flower in the toilet while Bender laughs watching a show. By now, Leela has had enough and complains to the professor, who quickly slaps an empathy chip into Bender's head. With the help of the chip, Bender can feel everything that Leela feels, including the despair of losing her beloved pet. Actually feeling a little bit guilty, Bender flushes himself down to find Nibbler. Following suit soon after, Fry and Leela search for Bender. They finally find him in the sewer, struggling to do some repairs without a manual.
Didn't have to come down here.
I know, but I just miss Nibbler so much.
Typical Bender stuff. They start their search for Nibbler and encounter a whole mutant brigade who give a civilizational tour to the folks of New York. The mutants inform the trio that there's a terrifying monster, El Chupanibre, who's been causing major trouble in their underground world. So, naturally, Leela assumes that they're talking about Nibbler and spills the beans. Hearing this, the mutants tie her up for a sacrifice. Eventually, Nibbler shows up, and so does El Chupanibre.
That's not El Chupanibre.
Say what?
That's El Chupanibre.
Fry jumps in to save the furball, but gets caught in a trap, leaving everything up to Bender. There's a problem. Since he's overwhelmed by Leela's fear, of course due to the pesky empathy chip, he's frozen and can't do what he does best. Bender teaches Leela to stop caring about everyone, including Nibbler, and boom, he's back in action. He fights the one-horned monster and flushes him down the giant sewer toilet. They head back to the lab, and Farnsworth removes the empathy chip from Bender's head. The day is saved, and the episode ends with Bender smoking a cigar and Leela realizing that being a little self-centered is actually kinda handy. Moving to episode 3, Ahead in the Polls, starts off with a presidential election race of John Jackson and Jack Johnson for the office of the world. After registering to vote, the gang head back to the office and find that the price of titanium has skyrocketed due to a mining disaster in Titan. Bender, who's always on the lookout to make quick money, decides to sell his 40% titanium body to the local pawn shop. He starts living lavishly with his head-only lifestyle, rolling in cash and acting like he owns everything. However, at At the Hall of Presidents, a talk with Richard Nixon's head ruins the party and crushes Bender's dream of a head-only lifestyle. So the next day, Fry and Bender rush to the pawn shop only to find out it's already been sold to some unknown buyer. Later, Leela, the head-only Bender, and the now very naked Fry, he sold his clothes to the pawn shop for $50, are chilling at Planet Express and find out that Nixon is somehow running for president again. But what surprises them is that Nixon is the unknown buyer and is using Bender's body to get around the rule of nobody can be elected more than twice. Clever Nixon. Very clever. Seeing this, the trio head straight to Washington, D.C. to stop Nixon and get the robot buddy's body back. They try confronting Nixon directly, but that doesn't work because Nixon's, well, Nixon. So they break into his room at the Watergate Hotel and Leela manages to separate Nixon's head from Bender's body. But Fry accidentally wakes Nixon up and he, ranting about his big plans for its future, also about running into people's houses to wreck them. Yeah, that's some notoriously big plans. But the sneaky Bender records the whole conversation and uses it to blackmail Nixon into giving back his body.
Uh-oh. I don't like where this is heading.
Election day rolls around and the trio are waiting for the election result. Leela is pleased to know that Nixon is losing, but things take a sharp turn after the robot votes come in, and Nixon ends up winning. The professor chimes in, saying that Nixon won by a single vote, and Leela remembers that she actually forgot to vote. Talk about irony. The episode comes to an end with gigantic robot Nixon entering the White House, destroying everything in his way. Fun fact, Nixon is made fun of so often in the Futurama series that the Nixon estate has actually filed a formal complaint against Matt Groening asking not to make fun of him. Anyway, moving on. Episode 6, The Lesser of Two Evils, kicks off with an advertisement of the Pastorama event, an exhibition of New York City from the 2000s. And yeah, we got some cowboys hunting a robotic mammoth, just like the good old days. So Fry, Bender, and Leela decide to take in the old NYC festivities. You know, getting mugged, visiting the burial of Al Sharpton, and spending some quality time at the filthy train station. Fun stuff, I guess. Followed by that, they steal a car and accidentally run over a robot, which surprisingly looks like Bender with a goatee. They immediately take the robot to the professor for repairs, and he introduces himself as Flexo. Bender and Flexo have quickly hit it off like they're some long-lost twins. However, Fry's not feeling the same, and declares Flexo is the evil Bender. Right then, Professor Farnsworth calls the crew for an important meeting, as he shows Jumbonium, which is a rare atom that's to be delivered for the Miss Universe pageant contest. He hires Flexo to guard Jumbonium, much to Fry's dismay.
I'm aboard, lad.
He keeps a close eye on the rare atom and stays awake all the way to the end of Flexo's shift. However, when it's his turn to guard, he falls asleep, only to find both the Jumbonian atom and Flexo gone. As the Miss Universe pageant's in full swing, the crew inform Bob Barker's head that they've lost the atom and gently ask him to sign the paper. But Mr. Barker's furious and asks them to find it before he skins them alive. Well, that escalated pretty fast. Just then, they spot Flexo and rush to catch him red-handed. Both Bender and Flexo start brawling, forcing Leela to shoot at the overhead chandelier. As the planets start falling, the stolen Jumbonian pops out of Bender's chest compartment, revealing that Bender was the black sheep, not Flexo. However, in a plot twist, Flexo gets arrested instead of Bender due to how similar they look. The pageant contest continues as planned despite Bender and Brannigan announcing Leela as the winner, much to her shock. However, her happiness is short-lived as Brannigan reveals the real winner as Miss Vega, and Bender's still upset about his failed heist. Not today, buddy. The next episode, The Honking, starts off with Bender's uncle Vladimir on his deathbed. The news soon reaches Bender, and he takes the crew to his uncle's spooky castle in Thermostat. As per Vladimir's wish, the butler gets a meager inheritance, his son Tandy gets a $10 million fortune, and Bender, he inherits the whole family castle, which is a little spooky with graveyards and stuff. Hearing this, Bender's delighted. But there's a catch. In order to inherit the castle, he has to spend one whole night there. However, things start to get a bit strange as Bender starts seeing backward blood numerals, moving painting eyes, and the ghosts of his robotic ancestors. Bender's too spooked and gets run over by a werecar. The next morning, Fry finds Bender in his badly battered state. At first, they don't take Bender seriously, but after Amy shows them the tracks, they believe that Bender is actually telling the truth. They head back to the city, and Bender's convinced the werecar is following him. But the next day, he finds himself at an impound lot soaking in transmission fluid. He freaks out and goes to a robot gypsy who drops the bombshell that Bender himself is actually the werecar.
What? A werecar?
She explains that every night, when his internal clock resets, he transforms into a werewolf, or a werecar. And the worst part is, he'll soon murder his best friend, Fry. Spoiler alert, he won't. The only way to cure the curse is to track down and destroy the original werecar. With this new information in mind, they head back to Thermostat and start their investigation, which leads them to an old bird watcher, followed by a robot girl, and finally Calculon, who reveals that he was hit by the original werecar 1,000 years ago. Explains that back when he was a car manufacturing machine, he helped to create the most evil car that ever existed, Project Satan. He used cursed parts like Hitler's steering wheel and Manson's turn signal. They're led to an abandoned Chrysler factory, where they find the original werecar Satan. The monstrous werecar goes after Leela and accidentally crashes into a furnace, melting him down and breaking the curse. Finally, Bender is back to being Bender. Moving on to episode 19, The Cryonic Woman. We see Fry and Bender decide to borrow the Planet Express ship for a teeny tiny ride around the world. The problem is, the whole ship's still attached to the building by an unbreakable diamond tether. So when they take over the ship to explore the world, they drag the entire Planet Express building along with them. Along the way, they manage to make a complete mess of the Leaning Tower of Pisa and the Great Wall of China, before making their way back to New York. The professor's obviously furious and immediately fires the duo with Hermie's help. Since Leela left the keys in the ship, she also gets fired. Now with no money or job, Leela tries to get her old job by reimplanting the career chip. But she accidentally mixes up her chip with Fry's, which means our main guy is the cryogenics counselor and Leela's the delivery boy. At his new cryogenics job, Fry ends up waking up Pauly Shore, who is supposed to be defrosted in Hollywood, not New York. However, things get even wilder when Fry's ex-girlfriend Michelle emerges from a cryopod.
What do you mean you don't know? Are you or not?
Who wants to know?
He takes her to the professor and introduces the rest of the Planet Express crew. However, she's not impressed and convinces Fry to freeze them for another 1,000 years. Fry agrees, and when they wake up, they find themselves in a post-apocalyptic wasteland surrounded by a bunch of strange-looking kids who take them in as citizens of their civilization. However, Michelle is still not satisfied, and she pushes Fry to take over as chief of the society. Fry takes on the current chief, Butch, in a death-rolling contest and actually ends up winning. By now, though, Fry is completely fed up with Michelle's constant nagging, so he decides to leave her behind. But much to Fry's surprise, it's still the year 3000, and the professor reveals that he and his ex-girlfriend were stuck in Pauly Shore's cryo tube. But when the transport crew realized that they got the wrong tube, they simply tossed him out of the ship. Guess what? Michelle's got a new boyfriend who's none other than Pauly Shore. Be it the year 1999 or 3000, some things never change. Episode 3, A Tale of Two Santas, kicks off with Walter Cronkite's head informing us about the bloodthirsty Santa and his antics during the last Christmas season. Unfortunately for the Planet Express crew, they're assigned to deliver letters to Santa's base at his death fortress on Neptune. Here, they're greeted by Santa's elves, who are called Neptunians.
We're not elves, we're Neptunians.
Leela rallies the Neptunians to take down Santa, but no one wants to volunteer, except for one odd Neptunian. They sneak into the base and confront the robot Santa by using the classic paradox: if Santa is programmed to destroy the naughty, and killing is naughty, then Santa should destroy himself. Boom. Easy. The evil Santa explodes. But he returns back and mumbles that he can do this all day. The robot Santa pulls out a freaking bazooka and chases after the gang. In their escape, the evil Santa stops their ship, accidentally trapping himself in ice. Man, that sucks. With the evil Santa stuck, Bender has made the new Santa and the Neptunians get back to making toys. However, after being mistaken for the evil Santa and subsequently thrashed, Bender dumps the toys into a sewer and proceeds to sip a bottle of beer. Right then, the cops arrest him for crimes against humanity, and Bender is sentenced to be torn apart by giant magnets. Jeez. In order to prove Bender's innocence, Fry and Leela rush back to Neptune and free the evil Santa from the icy prison. He chases Fry and Leela and hitchhikes a ride on their ship. Now, at Bender's execution room, the Planet Express crew dress up as Santa and ask the executioner to stop Bender's execution. But the executioner's like, nah, he's bending today, as Bender begins to be torn apart by magnets. Luckily, the robot Santa bursts in and saves Bender. As surprising as it might sound, the robot Santa requests Bender's help to ruin Christmas. Bender's absolutely thrilled, and the duo go on a rampage, completely destroying the city. Now, at the Planet Express HQ, the whole crew are closely knitted to one another as Fry finds the true meaning of Christmas. Aw, that's very sweet. The episode ends with the robot Santa giving Bender an empty gift, which reads, "Play Santa again, and I will kill you next year," as he kicks him out of the sleigh. They say karma is a boomerang, and Bender got hit right in the head. So now we are back in the past in good old New York, as we see Yancey Fry, Fry's elder brother, showing signs of jealousy towards his newborn brother. Who is his newborn brother? Philip J. Fry, obviously. Back to the present future, Fry's having a bad day, as he loses nearly all of his money at the racetrack. Not only that, he also gets zapped by the electrical system while trying to save his last dollar.
Hey.
We get a flashback again. This time we see the Fry brothers playing basketball and Philip Fry finding a rare 7-leaf clover. He uses it as a luck charm and wins against his elder brother, leaving him frustrated. In the present, he narrates the story of his lucky charm and decides to look for it in the underground city. Seeing his old house, he gets nostalgic and remembers the day when his brother started chasing to get his lucky charm after getting humiliated in front of the noticeably fat group. He recalls hiding his clover in his Ronco record vault and tries to open it. However, Fry is shocked to find the clover missing and throws all of his anger on a statue of Yancey, who turned out to be the first person on Mars. The trio head back to the HQ, and the professor pulls out an old documentary about Philip J. Fry, revealing that Yancey lived a dream life as a millionaire entrepreneur, rock star, and astronaut. Hearing this, Fry's visibly pissed. Right now, we get another flashback with Yancey preparing it for his wedding, with the family still grieving for his missing brother. He heads to the basement to fetch some of Fry's old music collection and finds Fry's fabled good luck charm. The scene shifts to the present as the trio head to the orbiting Meadows National Cemetery to get back Fry's lucky clover. They enter the cemetery, find his brother's grave, and start digging. But as Fry clears some moss stuck on the tombstone, he finds an inscription. To his shock, the grave actually belongs to his nephew, who was named after him by his elder brother Yancey. All the millionaire, rock star, Martian stuff was actually his nephew, Philip J. Fry II. He can't believe his brother loved him and never stole anything from him. Instead, he actually remembered and honored his memory by giving his name to his beloved son. He returns the 7-leaf clover to his nephew's grave, as the episode ends with the iconic "Don't You Forget About Me" playing in the background as Fry walks away. Geez, I'm sure there's not going to be any more absolutely heart-wrenching episodes, he said sarcastically, knowing some of these episodes are going to absolutely wreck me. Anyway, in episode 7, The Day the Earth Stood Stupid, planets are getting destroyed mysteriously, and the next in line is our good old planet Earth. After hearing about this, Nibbler starts panicking and runs away, forcing Leela to chase after him. As she follows him down an alley, she's confronted by a swarm of giant flying brains who start chasing her. She finds Nibbler pulling a spaceship out of a hidden hangar and asks to take her with him. While traveling in their teeny tiny spaceship, Nibbler telepathically speaks with Leela, revealing that he's actually a highly intelligent creature from a race of ancient aliens known as Niblonians. Okay, he's taking her to his home planet. But things aren't going great on Earth, as Fry finds that everyone is dumber than him today. Which, you know, is definitely not normal.
Oh, I'm a genius. Ow.
Leela and Nibbler finally reach Eternium, Nibbler's home planet, and Leela meets up with the other Niblonians, who inform her about their ongoing battle against the Brains. So these Brains want to know everything and are quite intolerant of other species, as the thoughts of other creatures actually cause them pain. To counter this, the Brains telepathically disable the Delta brainwave, turning their entire population into a bunch of morons. The only one who's immune is none other than our main guy, Fry. Now back on Earth, Fry is doing his best to teach his crew about how to stop being a fool. Leela arrives to deliver a message instructing Fry to find and defeat the Brain leader. She tries to explain that the Brains are the ones who are causing this mess, but Fry's not buying it until he sees 2 floating brains outside the window. They track down the Brain leader in the New York library, where he's absorbed all the information using the Dewey Decimal System. Fry starts throwing books at it, which does nothing to the big guy. He then remembers that brains are vulnerable to thoughts and tries to hurt it by thinking. To stop it, the Brain leader transports their minds into various literary works. Fry eventually frees himself from Brain's control and tries to electrocute him, only to get crushed under a bookshelf. As it turns out, Fry was controlling the story they were fighting through, and he declares that the big Brain leaves for no reason. And just like that, the Brain leader retreats and the Niblonians swoop in to devour the fallen ones. Yuck. Diving into episode 9, The Cyber House Rules. We see a baby basket mysteriously appearing right in front of Planet Express. Fry, Bender, and Leela head out to check it, as Leela believes it might be an abandoned baby. However, it turns out to be an audio invitation to her old orphanage. At first, Leela's a bit hesitant, but decides to pay a visit to tell her success story. The trio join the party, and Leela finds out that the other orphans are not doing well, with many having lowly jobs or selling whatever falls out of them. Despite this, they still mock her. And in comes our hero. It's not Fry, but Adlai Atkins, a doctor who's also Leela's crush. They share a moment, and Adlai offers to give her a second eye, making her look normal like the rest. Leela undergoes surgery at Taco Bellevue Hospital, and yeah, Bender becomes father of the 12 orphans after overhearing that he can make $100 per child from a government stipend. However, Bender realizes that the cost of taking care of the orphans is more than the stipend. So what does he do? He tries to get rid of them by selling them on the black market. Adlai and Leela, now officially dating, arrive wanting to adopt, and Bender's excited to get rid of all of them. However, his plans fall apart when URL and Smitty arrest him for child cruelty, endangerment for selling kids as food, and misinterpreting the weight of the livestock. Livestock? Bro is not beating these allegations. However, this doesn't stop Adlai and Leela. They find Sally being bullied for having ear on her forehead. Seeing this, Leela wants to adopt Sally as she was in a similar situation. However, Adlai wants Sally to have surgery to remove the extra ear. This offends Leela, and she demands to have her old appearance back. The scene then shifts to the renaming of the orphanage to Bender B. Rodriguez Orphanarium in his honor. The children give Bender a drawing they made of themselves with him. At first, Bender is annoyed and throws it in his chest compartment, but after the children leave, he sticks it on there with a refrigerator magnet. Well, that's quite an upgrade coming from the unempathetic Bender.
Oh, get away! Come on! Just got all that gum off of there! Hey!
In the next episode, The Root of All Evil, Hubert, Professor's son, and Dwight, Hermes' son, have been suspended from their boarding school after a confrontation with the bully Brett Blob. Now, bored at Planet Express, they use Professor's voice changer machine to prank Fry, Leela, and Bender, sending them on a fake delivery mission to Dogdo 8. The trio take off and return after a week, only to find that there's no such place as Dogdo 8, with the universe ending at Dogdo 7. Come on, that's just classic comedy. The Professor and Hermes are furious and decide to teach the boys to take responsibility. How do you do that? By forcing them to get a job, of course. But the boys take it like really seriously and create a newspaper delivery service, Awesome Express, a direct competitor to, you guessed it, Planet Express.
Who's going to use a delivery service with a kicked sign?
With the help of their newly ordered delivery ship, they start making Benjamin Franklin's and end up making more money than Planet Express. The boys then come up with Plan Dwight Lightning, wherein they hire Fry, Leela, and Bender by offering better wages and take over Planet Express after learning that the professor had declared himself dead to avoid taxes. Of course. Now, as the new bosses, they kick the professor and Hermes out and start working on their company. Very soon, though, the boys find themselves overwhelmed by the complaints that start rolling in as people haven't received their newspapers. The boys reveal that they've been dumping all their deliveries into a crater on the moon. With no other option, they turn to their fathers, who seize the chance and deliver the newspapers using the Planet Express ship. They deliver all the papers with only one left for Brett Blob. The boys are scared and confess that they broke his window. The fathers apologize to Brett's father, who's having none of it, and sends the puny humans to the hospital. Brett's father ends up visiting the professor and Hermes to offer an apology, as the episode ends with the fathers having a happy drink while Brett engulfs Hubert and Dwight. Alright, diving into episode 15, I Dated a Robot. You guessed it, Fry dates a robot, specifically a celebrity. In the 31st century, everything is possible, and by that I mean everything. Through the use of a sort of dating site, Napster.com, Fry and Leela download the persona of Lucy Liu into a blank robot. Fry and robot Lucy Liu spend their time doing piggyback rides, feeding aliens in a zoo-like park, and playing with miniature soldier toys. You know, typical 31st century stuff.
You're cute.
You.
However, the rest of the crew is worried about Fry's dating choice and show him an educational film explaining the dangers of dating a robot, which ironically happened when Fry was in the cryopod. Even after seeing the propaganda film, Fry brushes it off as he smooches with the Lubot. So Bender, along with Zoidberg and Leela, confront the CEO of Napster, telling him to shut down his company. They soon learn, though, that it's not Napster. It's Kid Napster. In the back room, they find Lucy Liu along with other celebrities who were kidnapped to create illegal copies to sell it to customers. They rescue Lucy Liu's head, while the CFO of Kid Napster uploads a backup of Liu's personality, creating the erotic assassins. The robot Lucys start chasing them and end up in a theater where Fry's with his own Lucy bot. They hide in the projection room, and with no other option, Fry's Lucy bot sacrifices herself, causing the other Lucy bots to explode, and they pop like popcorn. The real Lucy Liu requests Fry to get rid of the Lucy bot, asking him to move on from his fantasy. With a heavy heart, he erases Lucy bot's memory as she vows to never forget him. As Fry wipes his tearful eyes, he's glad that he'll at least get to know more about the real Lucy Liu. Plot twist, Bender and Lucy have fallen in love and they kiss each other while Fry is completely disappointed. Alright, now moving to the penultimate episode of Season 3, Future Stock, the professor's holding a stockholders meeting and reveals that the company is on the brink of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Zoidberg and Fry stumble into a room full of cryogenic defrostees and meet That Guy, a sleazy businessman who froze himself to find a cure for bonitis. After seeing that they both share the same vision, Fry brings That Guy to the stockholders' meeting and nominates him to take over the company. After winning the trust by only one vote, That Guy becomes the CEO while Fry is made the new vice chairman of Planet Express.
Dun 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 dun.
After taking over as the CEO, That Guy splurges a lot of money on flying chairs, black suits, and on an ad that looks similar to Apple's famous 1984 one. Zoidberg, being Zoidberg, ends up selling off his remaining shares to That Guy in exchange for a sandwich. Talk about a deliciously terrible deal.
I would have settled for a hard roll with ketchup inside.
Fry and That Guy meet with Mom, and That Guy takes the responsibility of dealing with her. And by dealing with, I mean completely selling Planet Express to her. At the Intergalactic Stock Exchange, the sale is said to be finalized during the shareholder meeting. The Planet Express crew, of course, votes against the sale with their total percentage coming around 49%. However, their happiness doesn't last longer, as That Guy's controlling stake of 51% is enough for the sale to go through. Bender, Zoidberg, and the rest of the Planet Express are thrown out of the hall, and they realize that selling the company to Mom Corp is actually a great idea, making them rich. However, just before the sale could go through, That Guy's bonitis kills him and Fry gains control over Planet Express. He decides not to sell the company and gives control of the company to Professor Farnsworth. Ironically, this results in stock taking a deep nosedive, making the crew completely poor again. But hey, at least they're together, right? Moving on to the next episode, Leela's Homeworld. Professor Farnsworth announces that Leela has been named as the Orphan of the Year by the Cookieville Minimum Security Orphanarium.
Your parents must be so proud. Ooh, sorry.
They head there, and Leela gives a touching speech about her upbringing. Now back at the HQ, Leela is feeling down as she misses her parents, and Fry tries to comfort her by taking her for a walk. As she gazes at the stars in deep contemplation, we see two one-eyed mutants watching her from a drain who look suspiciously similar to the one-eyed girl that we know. The next day, Bender's new business model of dumping waste is a nasty success as he pumps the sewers with more garbage. But this pisses off the mutants who kidnap Bender, Fry, and Leela to turn them into mutants. Right then, two hooded mutants swoop in and save the trio. They take refuge in a mutant home and find a shrine dedicated to Leela's life, filled with keepsakes from her childhood. This freaks out Leela, who begins to suspect that some crazy perverted mutant is after her. The mutant mob catches up, and the three-handed mutant announces the death penalty for the trio as he's running for re-election as Supreme Mutant. You know, typical political stuff. Just then, a hooded mutant appears and whispers into his ears as the trio's sentence is reduced from death penalty to never setting foot on the sewers again. However, this makes Leela suspicious of the hooded mutants, so she dives into the toxic lake, and to her surprise, it doesn't affect her at all. Back on the surface, Fry heads to the orphanarium and takes the note that was left with Leela as a baby. Later, he meets up with the professor who runs the note through the analysis machine, revealing the shocking truth that Leela is not an alien. She's a mutant. Now we get a flashback to the day when Leela was born. The midwife tells her parents that she is the least mutated mutant ever, which makes them think that the sewers are not for her, so they leave her at the orphanarium, hoping she could have a better life. Leela tracks the hood mutants down to the home with her shrine and points the gun at them for allegedly killing her parents. Right then, Fry crashes through the ceiling and reveals that the two hooded figures are her parents, Morris and Munda. Leela can't believe it. She gives a tight hug to her parents as the episode ends with a montage of Leela's parents secretly taking care of her from infancy to adulthood. Aww. Alright, it's Freedom Day. A day where literally whatever you do has no consequences at all. Be it punching your neighbor or bathing naked with a bunch of nutcases. You can do it all on Freedom Day. However, this reminds Zoidberg of his days on his home planet where he had to suffer for it. The crew had to hear Nixon's head speech, but before he could finish, Zoidberg celebrates the day by doing the most Zoidberg thing ever, munching the Earthican flag like it's a wafer. This shocks Nixon and the Earthicans. He is named a traitor and chased to the Decapodian embassy. Zoidberg is put on trial and the jury asks him to apologize for eating the flag. But the idiotic crustacean refuses, which leads to the jury finding him guilty. The scene then shifts to Zap Brannigan, the Earth's self-proclaimed genius, who decides to attack the Decapodian embassy. But they aren't too happy with this and launch a full-scale invasion of the planet. Within a matter of days, the Decapodians take over Earth and force the citizens to build a massive mobile oppression palace. However, Fry, Bender, and Leela have had enough and plan to get their freedom back, so they steal a heat-seeking missile and launch it on the moving mud castle. However, this turns out to be an epic failure since the palace is apparently cold-blooded just like the Decapodians. After seeing the cruelty of his own people, Zoidberg jumps into action and burns the Earthican flag. He then tosses it at the palace, which is just enough for the missile to lock in and destroy the mud castle. In the end, Zoidberg is forgiven and treated like a hero. As a present, he takes another bite out of the Earthican flag.
Now that's a grand old flag!
Moving on to episode 7, Jurassic Bark. We see Fry and Bender goofing around practicing their new magic tricks for the upcoming show. Right then, Fry notices the headline about findings of 20th century artifacts in the newspaper. Seeing this, Fry gets curious and heads to the Museum of Natural History wanting to know more about it, and finds out that the place they found is actually his old workplace, Benucci's Pizza, and also he spots his old dog Seymour. After seeing his fossilized dog, Fry gets emotional and demands the museum give him his dog back. However, the authorities are all like, nah kiddo, they kick him out of the museum. But Fry's not giving up. After 3 whole days of protesting, he finally gets his fossilized dog, and the professor tells him that he can actually have his dog back, running around like 1,000 years ago. Flashing back to the past, we see Seymour actually finding the frozen Fry at Applied Cryogenics. As he makes a lot of noise, Fry's parents are called, who take him back, completely ignoring that their son is right in front of them. Back in the present, Bender makes it back with the fossil after throwing it in lava and subsequently retrieving it because he felt bad. You know, typical Bender things. The professor reveals that Seymour was 15 when he passed away, which is a bit disappointing for Fry. He realizes that Seymour had lived 12 more years after he was frozen, and decides against cloning him as he believes that he might have moved on. However, this was not the case, as we see Seymour waiting outside Fry's workplace for the next 12 years waiting for his master to return. And one day, he finally closes his eyes and peacefully goes to sleep once and forever. Yeah, this one is pretty famous, even for people who haven't seen Futurama. It really tugs at the heartstrings. In the episode The Why of Fry, Fry is watching Nibbler and drowning in misery at Orzognax after being rejected by Leela. As he sobs of his sad story, the furry creature knocks him out and drags the unconscious Fry to his spaceship, taking him to his home planet, Eternium. Over there, he meets up with the Niblonians, who reveal Fry's genetic condition, which we already know from episode 7 of season 3, The Day the Earth Stood Stupid. To put it simply, Fry is immune from the attack of the Brains, who are an evil race that is all about sucking and destroying everything. They give Fry a quantum interface bomb to destroy the infamous infosphere. Once inside, Fry checks out the info desk and realizes that he can ask any question that he wants to know.
What really killed the dinosaurs?
However, he gets caught by the brain spawn, who reveal that he's the fabled one, born to destroy them once and for all. Seeing this, Fry activates the bomb, ready to sacrifice himself for the sake of the universe. Right then, the brain spawn tell him that the Niblonians aren't really the good guys like they pretend to be, and suggest Fry to ask about the night of December 31st, 1999, the fateful day that he was frozen. Initially a bit hesitant, he finally caves, and decides to find out that Nibbler was the one who tipped him off the chair that led him into cryosleep. Seeing this, Fry is shocked and understandably upset, but before he can process it, he's sent to an alternate world along with the brain spawn. The brain spawn tell Fry that he can go back to the past and stop Nibbler from tipping him into the cryogenic pod. So he travels back to 1999, confronts Nibbler before he can push him into the cryopod. Nibbler apologizes, tells him that it's important for the future of the universe's survival. In the end, Fry realizes that the future and Leela are both worth saving, and he freezes himself. Now back in the present, Fry obliterates the infosphere. To prevent future trouble, Nibbler wipes Fry's memory and hands him a flower. Later, Fry offers the flower to Leela, who's touched, and gives him a kiss. In the next episode, The Devil's Hands, or Idle Playthings, we find Fry playing the holophoner horrendously to win Leela's heart. After humiliating himself in front of his teacher, Fry decides it's time to cheat, and Bender introduces him to the Robot Devil. The Robot Devil takes him to spin the Wheel of Robots to randomly choose a donor to replace his hands. However, the wheel of whatever does the Robot Devil dirty, as it lands right on him. Despite the initial protest, the Robot Devil switches his hands with Fry's, which goes absolutely well for Fry as he becomes a holophoner prodigy. He plays at the Hover Carnegie Hall and plans to win Leela's heart with an opera commissioned by Hedonism Bot. Fry starts his opera, Leela, Orphan of the Stars, which is shaping up in the perfect way for Fry to express his feelings. However, the Robot Devil isn't vibing with the deal that he made. He wants his hands back. To do this, he first offers Bender an air horn to annoy people as much as he pleases. Bender, the buckethead that he is, uses this air horn on Leela, causing her to lose her hearing.
I just wanted to annoy you.
What? Oh, this is horrible!
At the intermission of the opera, the robot devil offers Leela new ears in exchange for her hand. The second act begins, and the opera's going as good as you'd expect. However, the robot devil gets furious after Fry portrays him as a less flattering comedic weirdo, pissing him off. In a classic opera style, the robot devil picks up Leela and drops the bombshell that he'll take Leela's hand in marriage. Kinda clever, right? If Fry doesn't give up his hands. So with no other option, Fry trades back the robot devil's hands, and with it his holophoner skills go down the sewers. The opera turns into a disaster, and the audience storms out angry. But who would have guessed it? Leela stays behind and asks him to continue playing the instrument as the episode comes to an end with Fry and Leela's holographic image kissing as they walk together. Now, moving on to Season 5 of Futurama, which is slightly different from the other seasons as we get a full-on movie-style story instead of normal-length episodes. So, without further ado, let's get started with the first movie, Bender's Big Score. And seriously, strap in because we got some crazy time travel shenanigans. It's gonna get complicated. It has been quite some time since executives at Box Network canceled the Planet Express's contract. However, the professor announces that these executives were just fired, so they're back and running. Hearing the good news, the crew start partying. But the celebrations don't last long as Hermes gets decapitated and squashed by the ship. They rush him to the hospital, and the repair guy, Lars Fillmore, puts his head in a jar. Immediately, Lars and Leela fall for each other, which doesn't sit well with Fry. Hermes' wife, LaBarbara, joins them and tells Hermes that she's going back to her ex, Barbados Slim, leaving him behind. And so does the Planet Express, who head out for a new delivery in the Nude Beach planet. On their way, Leela notices Fry has an odd tattoo of Bender's face on his butt. Little do they know, this tattoo is actually a time code that allows for literal time travel, somehow. While they're chilling on the beach, some alien scammers pull a quick one, more like a long one, by making them sign petitions, only to spam and scam them later on. Worst of all, though, the scammers infect Bender with a virus, making him their obedient servant, and they use him to take over the entire Planet Express. These scammers soon discover Bender's face on Fry's butt and use it to summon the time travel portal. Nibbler and the Niblonians jump into the scene and attack with the help of the Kitten-class attack ships. However, they get easily overpowered by some chairs, forcing them to retreat. The scammers discover that they can use the time portal only as a one-way trip, so Bender volunteers to do the dirty work and he starts stealing important artifacts from the past. Even replaces Professor's doomsday device with a rose. Man, these guys are in for a huge payday.
Sweetheart! Whoa!
Meanwhile, Hermes is fed up with only having a head, so he has Bender go back in time to get a body replacement. The professor, along with the Harlem Globetrotters, find out that the paradox-free time travel is possible, but incredibly dangerous, eventually destroying all time duplicates. The scammers, who have now collected a lot of loot, decide to get rid of Fry to destroy the time code. In order to escape from his imminent vaporization, he uses the time code to escape back to 2000, and the scammers send Bender to kill him. After a long struggle and a lot of stalking, 12 years worth, Bender finally gets rid of Fry by blowing up Panucci's pizza and also turning Fry's dog Seymour into a statue. Now, back in the present, Bender informs the scammers, and they just proceed to wipe out his memory along with the time code. The crew holds a ceremony in memory of Fry, only for Fry to return at his own funeral.
But I killed you in 2012!
This is where things get really wild, so just bear with me here. As it turns out, the Fry that went to the past created a duplicate of himself, the one that was hunted by Bender. This Fry, the one at the funeral, was frozen himself with the original Fry from the main timeline. When the real Fry, which we saw in episode 1, woke up, the Fry who traveled to the past froze himself again for another 8 years, and that Fry is now in front of them. Does that make sense? Okay, now heading back to the 21st century. We see duplicate Fry working at Panucci's, hanging out with his family, and playing with his dog Seymour. Despite that, he still misses Leela, and watches a news report of Narwhal, Lilu, and decides to take care of the narwhal, which reminds him a lot of her, so just keep that in mind for now. In the present, Nibbler decides to destroy the time travel code from Fry's butt, and the scammers leave him alone this time. Hopefully, that puts an end to any more crazy space-time stuff. Just kidding, that would be too easy. After a lot of dating, Lars and Leela decide to marry, and at the wedding, Hermes' head gets chopped off by a chandelier because, as you know, duplicates, including duplicate bodies, are doomed. Seeing this, Lars calls off the wedding, shattering Leela's heart. Soon after, Richard Nixon's head comes on to TV, revealing that he got scammed. And this time, they have to vacate Earth as the scammers have bought the whole planet. The crew is forced to live in the cold and harsh environment of Neptune. But they get an unlikely ally as Robot Santa joins in the cause to defeat the alien scammers. The final showdown begins, with the teamwork and Hermes who coordinate the attack. They manage to corner the scammers. So with no other option, the scammers resort to using the Doomsday device only to find out that Bender has swapped it. The scammers get blasted off, and Bender is awarded a medal for his bravery and for his stealing skills. However, Leela's upset that Lars totally avoids her now. So Fry brings in Lars to talk with Leela, only for an alien scammer to ambush them. Lars tricks the scammer into exploding with a Bender duplicate that's set to self-destruct, blasting all three of them. The smoke clears, and Leela finds the time code tattoo on Lars's butt, revealing that Lars is actually Fry's duplicate. Flashback time again. As it turns out, when Bender fired at the pizza shop, Fry survived, and the blast only burned his hair, leaving him looking exactly like Lars. So he rushed to the cryogenic lab and froze himself for 1,000 years. Upon waking up, he took a job as an experienced feeder and finally met Leela in the hospital. Realizing that he was doomed to die after seeing Hermes' body getting squashed, he canceled the wedding to save Leela the pain of losing him to the paradox. Man, that is heavy. Anyway, Bender heads back to the past and sticks the timecode tattoo on the original Fry so that everything that just happened does in fact happen, thereby stabilizing the timeline. Whew, wow. As he returns back to the present, he brings a whole lot of different Benders from the basement. They randomly start exploding one after the other, ripping a tear in the universe as the movie ends in a cliffhanger. Well, so much for a stable timeline. Moving to the next season with the episode Rebirth. We see Fry walking into the lab like he's been hit by a lightning bolt. So just like any other sane person would ask, he asks the professor what happened to him. The professor tells him about their last adventure where things turned a bit messy after Zap Brannigan started attacking their ship, causing it to crash outside their building. Since the rest of the crew only had safety spheres on their heads, they're all skeletons. However, the professor is pretty chill about it. He's got a machine filled with stem cells that can be used to bring back the Planet Express crew. Bender's having a bit of trouble due to his fried power supply. So the professor stuffs a Doomsday device, forcing him to constantly party or he'll go kaboom.
You must burn off the Doomsday energy
Leela hasn't come out yet, and when she finally does, she's stuck in a coma, and Fry's totally heartbroken. In order to get out of his depression, he builds a robot Leela at Build-A-Bot and uploads Leela's memories, which creates a duplicate of the original Leela. The duplicate learns of her robotic nature, so they take her and explain the fatal situation, showing her the comatose body. After failing to wake her up by the most scientific approach, the crew decides it's time to say goodbye by feeding her to a cyclophage. That's quite a merciful goodbye. However, before the cyclophage appears, the real Leela wakes up, and things seem to go well until she spots Fry kissing her robot version. Right then, the cyclophage returns, forcing them to retreat to their ship. They return to the Planet Express HQ, and the two Leelas confront each other. Later, Fry gazes at the stars and explains his true feelings towards Leela. The real Leela eavesdrops on their conversation, and Fry patches things up with her. But the robot Leela's not having any of it, as the Leelas start fighting. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, Fry shoots at himself, revealing that he's actually a robot. And that's when the professor explains what actually happened on the accident day. He reveals that Fry actually saved Leela by putting his whole body in front of her, which left his body completely obliterated. Seeing this, Leela built a robot Fry, which ended up electrocuting him, erasing their short-term memory. The real Fry pops out, and the two robots shed their skin as they leave to live their lives. But hold on, we still got time to cover as the cyclophage returns to make Leela his snack. Bender's intense vibration makes him lose his eye, and the cyclophage gobbles him up. The Doomsday device in Bender's body explodes, and he emerges totally fine, finally free of the excess energy. The episode ends with the Planet Express crew celebrating with Brannigan finally emerging from the professor's machine with a wee. In this next episode, Attack of the Killer Ape, the crew get their hands on the brand spanking new iPhone. EYE, as an I, clever. However, little did they know, Mom, the distributor of the iPhone, has malware installed on them that will make them into zombies who will buy anything from her company. The scene then shifts to Fry, who's jealous of Bender's recent social media fame as he's a lot of mindless zombies. Followers. He challenges Bender that he'll be the first to hit 1 million followers, and whoever loses will have to take a dip of the vomit and diarrhea of Mr. Chunks. Gross. However, things aren't going great for Fry, as Bender posts anything and everything, which instantly goes viral. Seeing this, Fry announces that he's not like Bender, who will stoop to such tactics for just some followers. But then he does the same thing and leaks a super embarrassing video of Leela talking with a boil on her butt, Susan. And yeah, Susan can sing.
You have a boil on your butt that sings show tunes with you?
The video racks up millions of views as Fry and Bender hit 1 million followers simultaneously. Back in Mom Corp, Mom releases the virus through Twitcher, turning the 1 million followers into zombies who buy the latest iPhone 2.0. On the way, Leela meets Fry, who apologizes, and instead of getting angry, she thanks him for making her confident, as she doesn't have to hide her boil anymore. While they passionately talk and apologize to each other, the zombie horde moves towards the nearby mom store to get hands on the new iPhone 2.0. That's a very dystopian ending, but hey, at least Mom's loving it. Moving on to the next episode, the late Philip J. Fry, we see Bender keeping Fry up all night as he's quite busy with a fembot. And because of Bender, Fry oversleeps and misses Leela's birthday lunch. Feeling guilty, Fry tries to make it up by inviting Leela for dinner at the Cavern on the Green. However, this means that he has to skip Hedonism Bot's Girls Gone Wildest bachelor party. So what does he do? He rejects the offer, and Bender's left with the professor, who agrees to act as his wingman. However, when Fry was about to leave for the restaurant, the professor drags Fry to test his new invention, one-way time machine. The professor assures them that they'll be moving forward only by 1 minute. It's completely safe. Or is it? So Fry's all like, okay, and records a message for Leela before the professor takes them to the year 10,000.
Whoopsie!
Now, back in the present, Leela is incredibly frustrated, since Fry missed their dinner date and assumes he went to one of Hedonism Bot's parties. She heads back to the Planet Express HQ and finds the party was a complete disaster, as the only survivor was Hedonism Bot himself. Believing that Fry was along with the professor and Bender, she's both sad and angry. And Zoidberg mourns their demise in his typical fashion. Back with Farnsworth and Fry in the future, the professor figures out that they should keep moving forward until they reach a time where they can find a time machine that will help them get back to the past. As they travel through the future, they find everything from knights riding ostriches to a time where giraffes have enslaved humanity. They traverse time all the way to the year 1 billion. That's a lot of zeros. Since this is the end of time, the professor says there's only one thing they can do, and that is to watch the universe ending itself. However, much to the surprise, the universe restarts as they loop through history again. And when they finally arrive at the right time, they accidentally crush their past versions, successfully getting rid of the time travel paradox. Now back in the present, Fry rushes to the Cavern on the Green to meet Leela as they both share a sweet moment, while Bender's busy burying their duplicates in the background. Alright, the next episode, That Darn Cats, starts off with Leela throwing Nibbler's poop in a volcano from which Amy's collecting data for her thesis. The next morning, Amy's late for her doctoral exam and rushes only in her undies. She explains her thesis using a planetary ratchet, but fails horribly, as one of the examiner's cats starts playing with it. This triggers her cat allergy and accidentally drops the model, causing the panel members to reject her.
Hell nay.
The horse says, doctorate denied.
They land in Planet Express HQ, and Fry encourages Amy about how, he's got no degree, but he's a prominent boy in a package delivering company. Well, I'm sure that was meant to be a motivational talk. The same cat, which caused Amy's cat allergy, joins them at Planet Express, and the members are quickly attracted to it. Later, they all adopt their own cats, except for Amy and Nibbler, who realize that something is strange about these pesky furballs. They visit Professor Katz and realize that he's actually a puppet, controlled by the white cat. They return to the Planet Express and sneak into the basement, but quickly get caught by the cats, who reveal a story of their home planet, Thubian 9. Initially, it was a great planet to live on. However, due to the planet's orbit slowing down, it had become inhospitable for cat life, forcing them to come to Earth to steal its rotational energy. It was Amy's thesis that gave them a glimmer of hope to harness Earth's energy. The white cat summons all the cats in the neighborhood to rub against the building, causing the Earth's rotation to stop. The energy is transferred before the cats leave for their home planet. Now, with the Earth's rotation stopped, the whole city begins to overheat, causing Amy to break down. However, this sudden breakout also gives her an idea on how they can restart Earth's rotation, since they can't reverse the ratchet. The whole crew pushes it even further, and voila! They successfully recover Earth's rotational energy. With Earth spinning again, Amy is awarded a PhD in applied physics for saving the planet. Now it's time for the 100th episode of Futurama. The mutants are revolting, which kicks off with Professor Farnsworth announcing that there's a 100th delivery, and this time they're going to deliver nitroglycerin souffle to Mrs. Astor. They make it in one piece to the Waldorf asteroid, and the lady's impressed, and has a small talk with Professor Farnsworth, inviting him and the crew to a highly sophisticated fundraiser. At the fundraiser, Mrs. Astor narrates the tragic sinking of the land Titanic, in which she lost her husband. In order to honor her husband's memory, she establishes a scholarship fund and even shows a video of Day in the Life of a Mutant. However, Leela's not impressed with Mrs. Astor, who reveals that it's just an act to prevent the mutants from revolting. As Leela exits, Fry accidentally reveals that she's a mutant,
You know how mutants are.
shocking everybody in the crowd. She's immediately arrested and banished to never appear on the surface. They meet up with Leela, who's visibly upset, and take a stroll around the sewers to find the land Titanic that sank after hitting a mailbox. Yeah, a literal mailbox. As they look around, they find a rare quantum gemerald. and also a list of passengers, which will come in handy later on. Meanwhile, Fry, who's feeling guilty, jumps into the toxic pool, turning into a messed up version of himself. Even Leela can't handle it. Now the scene shifts to Fry uniting the mutants to fight for their rights as they make life miserable for the surface dwellers. Seeing this, Mrs. Astor demands action, and Poopenmeyer redirects the sewage to Madison Cube Garden. Right then, the mutants come out of the manholes and demand for their rights. Mrs. Astor orders her butler to get rid of the mutants and fires a missile at the Madison Cube Garden, creating a huge wave of sewage water. As the tidal wave approaches, Fry uses the quantum gemerald, saving them from drowning. He then reveals that they found a list of passengers which include Leela's grandmother, who was a young worker on the land Titanic. She tells Mrs. Astor how Mr. Astor gave up his seat to save her and her mother. Hearing this, Mrs. Astor tells the mayor to grant the mutants their freedom, which the Mr. Poopenmeyer immediately approves. The mutants celebrate, and Leela kisses Fry, who returns back to normal. As it turns out, Fry actually didn't mutate. Instead, it was Mr. Astor all along who became part of Fry temporarily. Mrs. Astor can't believe her husband is back as the couple embrace each other. The crew returns back to their HQ as they dance and celebrate their 100th delivery with Leela's family. In this next episode, The Tip of the Zoidberg, we get a bit of lore related to the Professor and Zoidberg. It all starts back in the year 2927, where young Farnsworth and Zoidberg are on a covert mission to hunt down a Tritonian Yeti to create a bioweapon for Mom. Now we're back in the present with Fry sitting in Zoidberg's clinic to get rid of the Thorns after his failed diplomatic relations with the Cactus civilization. However, Zoidberg smashes Fry's hand with a book, leading to massive loss of blood. Oof. Followed by that, he cuts Leela in half, Hermes becomes something like a gnome, and Scruffy's left with a head on a head. And not to forget, Fry's condition turns him into Simpson, then Garfield, and finally a Smurf.
Oh, I hate Mondays.
The entire crew is pissed with Zoidberg and gang up to kick him out. Back to the past, Farnsworth and the rest of the soldiers fall into the methane swamp, giving them hypermalaria. Knowing that the entire mission will be doomed if they fail to hunt the Yeti, he takes his weapon and decides to take on the beast himself. As Farnsworth tracks down the Yeti, Zoidberg tags along, and they somehow take down the beast. With the Yeti dead, Farnsworth asks Zoidberg for a favor. Ask him to mercy kill him when the hypermalaria kicks in. The flashback ends, and Farnsworth reveals that the time has come. He wants Zoidberg to fulfill his promise. As Zoidberg strangles him, the professor stops him, telling him that he wants to die in a surprising way. So Zoidberg tries to kill Farnsworth in every way possible, but he fails. Leela and Fry catch him in the act, so they lock him up, and the professor breaks the silence that he's slowly dying of hypermalaria and wants Zoidberg to do the final act. So the crew head to free Zoidberg, only to find him sand crabbing his way out. Zoidberg meets Mom and requests the Yeti's pineal gland to cure his friend, Farnsworth. Surprisingly, she agrees to hand it over for a coupon. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew create a highly complex killing machine called the Murdilator to mercifully kill the professor. Zoidberg storms in, revealing that the professor doesn't have hypermalaria, but Yetiism. The professor turns into a Yeti, and Zoidberg feeds the pineal gland, only to turn him into a double Yeti. As the Professor Yeti approaches, the Murdilator collapses, and when the dust settles, the professor emerges looking totally normal. The episode ends with Zoidberg being bummed about giving away his tanning coupon, but Farnsworth has got his back, as the two friends sand crab their way to the tanning salon. We kick off the next episode, Cold Warriors, with another trip to the past, the year 1988, where we see a young Fry along with his father going ice fishing. After this trip, Fry came down with a cold. As he fights with his brother, Fry sees a poster of Nerd Search 88, which is a science contest, and Fry is quite pumped about it. In the present, the crew are also on an ice fishing trip, and let's just say it doesn't end very well as they return back to the HQ, only with a single baby fish and of course the deadly common cold. In this future though, the cold has been extinct for over 500 years.
Common cold? No! No!
Which means that everybody is very vulnerable to it. Right then, the whole Planet Express building gets slapped with a quarantine shield, and everyone except Bender gets sick. Since Bender's the only one who's not affected by the cold, he has to do all the chores just like a home robot. This obviously annoys him, so he leaves the building and wipes Zoidberg's phlegm on every quarantine worker. And voila, the 99% of Manhattan is infected. The professor reveals that he can actually create a vaccine, but there's a catch. They need to create a Fry puree since he's the only one that has the unmutated virus from the 20th century in his system. This reminds Fry of the invention that beat him during the Nerd Search 88. A sample of a virus perfectly preserved and cultured that was shot into space. They head to Saturn's dump moon, Enceladus, and retrieve the old experiment. With this sample, the professor is able to manufacture a vaccine. In the end, Leela comforts Fry, telling him to be proud of himself. In a final flashback, Fry's father gives him a speech on tough love. telling him that he's confident that one day he'll make him proud. He offers Fry a jacket, saying he doesn't want him to freeze. Man, if only he knew. What a heartwarming ending to a cold episode. God, I'm good. Moving to the next episode, Overclockwise. We see Fry, Bender, and Cubert getting hooked playing a video game, which they eventually end up losing against Mom's sons. So not wanting to take the L, again, Cubert overclocks Bender's processing power. Oh boy, it works like a charm, as he crushes Mom's obnoxious sons like it's nothing. The sons run back to their evil mother, who catches wind of Cubert's overclocking and arrests the professor and him for violating Bender's license agreement. On trial day, the judge isn't playing around as he orders Bender to appear for the hearing. However, since Bender doesn't appear, the judge slaps a hefty $10,000 fine until he does. As the crew plan their next move, Leela announces that she's leaving Fry to become a space real estate agent. With Leela and Bender gone, Fry's devastated and decides to end his life by riding a barrel over Niagara Falls. Instead of dying, he ends up in a secret cave and meets Bender, who's now turned into an all-powerful entity.
That was not worth $3,000.
As the judge is about to give his judgment, Bender shows up and agrees to testify for the professor. Since Cubert is still a minor, Mom sneakily drops the case against him, but still goes after Professor Farnsworth. However, Bender pulls a quick one, claiming that Cubert is a clone of the professor and by law they're basically the same person. So to put it simply, since they're both the same person, they can't be convicted for the same charges. Hearing this, the judge dismisses the case, and the professor is finally free. Mom captures Bender and takes him to dumb him down like the good old Bender. The scene shifts to Bender having a bottle of beer with Leela, joining them after missing Fry. Leela wonders what the future holds for her and Fry, so she asks Bender, who hands over a piece of paper. As both Fry and Leela read the paper, well, we don't get to see it, but from their reactions it's evident that the relationship had a lot of ups and downs, but in the end lived a very happy life. Moving on to episode 3, Decision 3012. It's the election year, with Nixon all set to win once again. In the Planet Express HQ, everybody's already decided to vote for Nixon's head, except for his biggest hater, Leela. She doesn't believe in Nixon's policies, like building a fence in the solar system to keep out illegal space aliens and cutting taxes for the rich. She announces to the crew that she's going to participate in the political process, making sure that Nixon never wins. In the presidential debate, she finds Senator Chris Travers as the only decent guy and agrees to become his campaign manager. And soon enough, Senator Travers wins the primary race. He's all set to fight against Nixon. Now, back in the White House, Nixon's having a special meeting with none other than Bender, who agrees to dig up some dirt on Travers. After hearing his middle name, Zaxar, Nixon and Bender plan to create a conspiracy theory, suggesting that he wasn't born on Earth. Outside of Travers' headquarters, Bender leads a rally, demanding Travers show his Earth certificate to prove that he's not an alien. Seeing this, Fry and Leela decide to visit the hospital where Travers was born, and even Bender decides to break in with him as they're apparently fun. Travers shows up and reveals that he's from the year 3028. He explains that after Nixon wins the election, he creates a massive fence along the solar system which, as you would guess, completely backfires, causing the economy to collapse due to lack of workers. In the end, Nixon turns the silent majority into the soylent majority, while the robots under the leadership of the Bender B. Rodriguez take over the planet. Well, that was a plot twist that I literally didn't expect at all. As humanity's last hope, the young Travers was sent back to the past to run against Nixon. After hearing his sad story, the crew decide to broadcast Travers' birth live on TV, and the crowd is convinced as he goes on to win the election. However, when Travers is about to give his victory speech, he starts glitching and disappears, as Bender explains that since Nixon lost the election, there's no robot uprising. No Travers. Now with Travers gone, Nixon does end up winning the election anyway. Alright, moving on to the next episode, Murder on the Planet Express. Tensions are running high on the Planet Express as every crew member seems to have some problem or accusation to throw at one another.
Have you been using my toothbrush to polish your ass again?
What?
To help the crew settle their differences and learn to work together, the professor takes them for a corporate team-building retreat. The guy running this retreat, Dan McMasters, asks Leela to pick a random hitchhiker to build trust among themselves. However, the hitchhiker turns out to be a shape-shifting alien which quickly gobbles up McMasters as the rest of the crew hide in the ship's panic room. But the room's life support gets shut down, and it's up to the crew to restart the life support fan, take the steering wheel, and spacewalk outside to reignite the ship. A daunting task indeed. Despite their differences, they work together and complete all 3 tasks before returning back to the panic room. Right then, the professor, who's actually the alien, begins gobbling up the crew one by one. In the end, the only ones left are Fry and Bender, who apologize to each other. And surprise, surprise, in comes Dan McMasters, who tells them all that it's part of the trust-building retreat. He also reveals that the rest of the crew is having a pizza party. However, Fry and Bender aren't buying it, as they shoot down McMasters, turning him into dust. Just then, the rest of the crew show up, and the duo realize that the McMasters guy was actually telling the truth. Now back in the Planet Express HQ, Fry and Bender watch a news report about McMaster's disappearance, offering $1 million for the one who turns in the killer. As the report ends, both Fry and Bender have their eyes locked on the telephone as they wonder if they should make the call. And with that, the episode comes to an end. In the next episode, Children of a Lesser Bog, it's time for Amy to pick her children from her husband's planet. They head to Kif's home planet and wait for the Grand Midwife to appear, who officially starts the ceremony with a little event, the Winnowan. It is nothing but a fancy term for saying survival of the fittest, as only a few tadpoles survive their swim, with many being eaten by predators, or sometimes Zoidberg.
4 of them made it. Well, 3.5.
In the end, only 3 tadpoles make it alive out of the gruesome ceremony. Now back on Earth, Kif brings the kids to visit Amy. Leela notices the little one calling her Mama, who also suspiciously has a giant eye just like hers. And that's when Amy reveals that Leela accidentally impregnated Kif, making her the kid's biological mother. Turns out that Kif's species only need to touch hands to create a baby. Kif explains that despite Leela contributing her DNA, Amy is his smizmor, or true mother. Zap calls Kif away for a mission, leaving Amy with the kids. However, Amy's baby handling skills are far from good, and she quickly wears out. So Leela steps in to help. But seeing her kids' growing dependence on Leela gets Amy jealous, and she complains to Kif about her embarrassing situation. Right then, the Grand Midwife arrives and challenges the motherhood of the kids. She reveals that Amy contributed no DNA, making Leela the mother of the kids. And yeah, there's also Scruffy in there, but don't ask me how.
Scruffy stuff gets around.
They probably just high-fived or something. After finishing his daring mission, saving Zap's butt from the raging tardigrades, Kif returns, and the Grand Midwife takes both him and Amy to a hut. Much to Amy's surprise, the only question the Grand Midwife asks is whether she loves her kids. With tears flowing from her eyes, she reveals that she does love them more than anything else, declaring her as their true mother. The children embrace their mother as the rest of the crew get emotional watching their happy family. Episode 8, Zap Gets Cancelled, kicks off with Zap Brannigan having a shower right in the command center. However, he doesn't stop with that, as he literally uses Kif as his loofah and juice sprayer, before hanging him on a wall hanger. Obviously, this angers Kif, and he accuses Zap of abusing him in the Democratic Order of Planets Court, also called the Dupe. In the court, Matt Cluck represents both Zap and Kif. However, the moment he hears about Zap's mistreatment, he's like, yeah, he's totally guilty. Zap gets cancelled, stripped of his Nimbus command, and finally sent to sensitivity training. Over at Planet Express, Leela gets a call from Glab, who offers the position of captain of the Nimbus. She accepts it, and appoints Fry as her first officer, while Bender self-appoints himself as the science officer. Back to Zap, he's stuck in the sensitivity training room along with Flashnut and Captain Cranky, who reveal their reasons for getting cancelled. Right then, the instructor, Dr. Gary Kind, arrives. However, Mr. Kind is not kind at all, as he knocks Zap around and throws a cup at Cranky. And yeah, the last one is a bit personal. Later, Mr. Kind takes them on a simulated space mission.
Missile, you fat moron!
So mean.
While Glab introduces Leela to the Nimbus, giving her the first mission as the captain. They land on the planet Tactilia and meet Queen Airy, along with other Tactilians. She takes them on a tour and shows off their air power plant, impressing Leela. Glab reveals her true purpose of visiting Tactilia, which is to sign a peace treaty that gives Dupe complete control of Tactilia's air supply. Meanwhile, Zap and his crew start attacking the Nimbus, thinking it as a simulated mission when it is not. They land on the planet, and Dr. Kind is revealed to be an evil botanical scientist. Dr. Kind threatens to poison the Tactilians with a durian, making the planet's air supply completely unusable for centuries. Seeing this, Glab orders Leela to fire on Dr. Kind, which she refuses to do. Even Zap refuses, saying that he's learned what is right and what is wrong. As Kind mocks them, he cracks open the durian. Right then, Dr. Kind's sensitivity training comes to an end, and Glab makes him the captain. Without a second thought, he orders the ship to fire, which instantly kills him. However, there's a chunk of durian still in the picture, and Leela rushes to prevent it from falling into the planet's main air source. She ends up catching it, and gets covered in durian smell, which even repulses the Tactilian queen. Now, back at Dupe headquarters, Zap apologizes to Kif, the Amazonians, Leela, and finally Dr. Kind. But he quickly gets sidelined by Glab, who awards Leela the Medal of Valor, and then kicks her out for disobeying orders. Whoop. That ended pretty quickly. So Leela's now back to the Planet Express HQ and is upset after being stripped from the Dupe captain position. But Fry cheers her up. And of course, in enters Zoidberg, who asks if he can lick the durian off of her, ending the episode. Moving on to the second episode of Season 9, The One Amigo. The younglings of the Planet Express work on everyone's favorite form of crypto, NFTs. The rest of the crew join in, and the kids explain how the NFTs work, which they don't quite seem to understand. And honestly, neither do I. However, after hearing that you can make a lot of Benjamins with it, Bender's all in and decides to make his own collection. The kids help him start his digital art career, and soon his NFT collection is flying high as it makes a whooping $94. But for Bender, money is money, and is quite happy that some fool has bought all of his collection. However, as soon as he sees his collection in the Museum of Modern Art, or the MODA, he's pissed that they don't give a damn about the real him. Feeling disappointed, he leaves the Planet Express to start searching for his real purpose.
Adios, carnitas bags!
Now, in Mexico, he meets up with his robot cousin, Doblando Rodriguez, and also his grandma, Abulatron. After spending time with them, Bender feels like he's back at home. And Abulatron gives him a mysterious quipu that she stole from Bender's mother. Looks like stealing runs through Bender's blood, or more like Bender's oil. Meanwhile, the professor comes up with a plan using a miniature model to get Bender's NFT collection back. They sneak into the museum and enter the secure computer room with the help of Zoidberg's special Screech. The professor manages to swipe Bender's collection, however the kids reveal that he can't simply delete an NFT. There are millions of copies. Now back in Mexico, Bender participates in the deadly hoop game, which boils down to Doblando versus Bender. The two fight for days until Doblando intentionally trips and falls. Bender is declared the winner and gives his victory speech thanking his family. However, what Bender doesn't know is the fact that the winner of the game actually gets sacrificed, and Bender, being Bender, refuses to accept the quote-unquote reward. But the referee simply kicks him into the pit where he meets the ancient robot emperors. He tells them about his NFT situation and stuff, and they're all like, no, we don't really do that here. But after seeing the quipu that he's holding, they explain that only his quipu can do the god-level algorithm to get the NFT back. After knowing that he can do it by himself, he steals it and makes a run for it. He goes to the Planet Express HQ and hacks the blockchain to get his NFTs back. As the professor rejoices, thinking that they've finally beaten the MODA, the kids tell him that the museum still holds the picture. But Bender's satisfied, saying, I own the factors of a 1,000,000-digit binary number that no one else can have. You know, just classic Bender stuff. Now to the final episode of the season, Otherwise. The episode kicks off with the Planet Express ship on fire as Leela accidentally activates the catastrophe mode instead of reclining her seat. Back at the Planet Express HQ, Farnsworth and Hermes are playing a game of alien Scrabble as the ship crashes into the hangar.
That explains it.
Fortunately, everybody's fine. The ship is completely out of shape. Seeing this, Professor Farnsworth can't handle it, as he mourns his old Bessie and is taken to the graveyard of spaceships. However, there is no ordinary junkyard. At the bottom, there's a multiverse, which is as cool as it sounds. Just then, Zap Brannigan shows up and gives a musical speech dedicated to old Bessie as he leads the crew to take one final tour of the ship. The crew enter the old ship and reminisce about the good old days. Fry takes the loss the hardest, and he ends up passing out. The crew rush to save him from the imploding ship. However, it's too late, as the ship goes kaboom and sinks into the plasma water. The scene shifts to Fry, who wakes up surrounded by the crew, but he's still having flashes of his past, present, and future, which makes him believe that something is going wrong. Despite this, Fry gets ready to propose to Leela at the Vampire State Building, but he starts feeling strange that he's already done this before. He's brought to Zoidberg's clinic, who diagnoses him with déjà vu, and Farnsworth reveals his new AI-powered ship. But Fry is still upset, telling everybody that there's something important in the old ship. In the HQ, the crew watch a news report of a ghost ship, and Fry's convinced that their old ship is a ghost. So they head to the graveyard, and of course, Brannigan shows up again. They start fighting by activating the cloaking device, making them invisible. In the end, Fry, Bender, and Leela's ship manage to take down the Nimbus, which drowns in the plasma water. Zap and Kif join the crew, only to get attacked by an invisible ghost ship. Seeing this, Zap's made the captain, and the ship lasts for only 10 seconds as the hull gets seriously damaged. With the ship literally about to explode, Fry and Leela start exchanging their vows, with Zap as their officiator. The new ship explodes. Surprise, surprise, the ghost ship turns out to be the whole crew in old Bessie. As it turns out, they actually managed to survive by navigating through different timelines while repairing the ship. Fry thanks the crew for saving him, and gives a picture to Leela of him and her as an old couple, suggesting that they've got quite a future ahead. And with that, Season 9 comes to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you did, feel free to drop the name of your favorite character of the series, along with the reason why you like them. Also, make sure that you've subscribed to our channel, so that you don't miss any future videos. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. See ya!
আরে না ইউটিউবার হইতে যাবো কে হ্যাঁ ইউটিউবার ভাই হ্যাঙ্গারে যাই, হ্যাঁ চলো হ্যাঙ্গারে যাই। চলো হ্যাঙ্গারে যাই। পিকে যাও কে রিয়া বাবা পিছি লবি ভাই মারা ভূত বানাই ফেলবে। কাম সারছে, আমি তো কোলর টাওয়ারে পড়ে গেছি। এই ল্যান্ডিংটা করাইলো কিটা ভাই? গোষ্ঠী মারছে। এই ইবন এই রিজন প্লেয়ার পড়ছে, রিজন ইবন এই রিজন প্লেয়ার পড়ছে, ইবন লাইভ।
হ্যালো, হ্যাঁ বলো। টাইম কি মোবাইল ক্লিয়ার? কারা? টাইম কি মোবাইল ক্লিয়ার?
এ ভাই হ্যালো ভাই, আমার কথা শোনো। রিজন প্লেয়ার পড়ছে ভাই, ইবন লাইভ। রিজন 39 পড়ছে, রিজন 39। হ্যাঁ ভাই আমার কথা কি তোমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছ? আরে ইবন ভাই পড়ছে, আরে মারতে হবে। ইবন লাইভ 29 আছে, রিজন 29 আছে, 29।
ধন্যবাদ। দুইটা আমার
তো 4 জনে একখান দিয়ে, 4 জনে একখান দিয়ে,
মারো। একটা বটলায় বলাইতে আছে বল।
খিরা এনিমি না তোমরা?
আল্লাহ জয়, সবাই বলাইতেছে, এনিমিও বলাইতেছে, মানুষও
না। ইবন ভাই পড়ছে, ওরে মারতে হবে।
কি রিভাইভ দেবো?
Help me!
তোমরা আছো কই? ও মা, তোমরা দেখি কোচিনকের দিকে চলে গেছো। আমিও গিয়া তাহলে ওখানে আর্সেনালটা খুললা কান্নেন্ডিটা লইয়া মাইর মোড় স্টার্ট কইরা লই। তারা এই যে এন বে মুন্না ভাই, এনে থাও, তুমি বাচ্চা থাও। হ্যাঁ আমি যাচ্ছি, দৌড় মেরে দেবো।
Carnival is officially on.
মারছে উনি প্লেয়ার। এই গোষ্ঠী মারছে।
আমি নামতে পারি না, আকাশ থেকে মেরে দিচ্ছি।
ও আকাশ উঠতে মারিয়েছে। আবার কোন প্লেয়ার যে আকাশ উঠতে মারিয়ে দেয়? এই যে মুন্না লাইভ পড়ছে তার উপর। আলা এই যে ইবন লাইভ, এই যে ইবন লাইভ।
সাগর ওদের পরে যাস না, রিস্ক করাচ্ছে তারা।
আরে খোল না তাড়াতাড়ি ভাই।
Help me! I'm being haunted!
আরে আমার উপর নাকি? ও না, আমি রিভাইভ দেবো। আমি জাস্ট কার্নেন্টের নিয়ে গিয়া ল্যাম্বরগিনি টান দিয়ে গিয়ে তোমাদের রিভাইভ দেবো। কার্নেন্টেটা জাস্ট নেবো, জাস্ট পালা টুং পালা। এই গোষ্ঠী মারছে, ভাঙলো কে? থাকে এনিমি আমারও গোষ্ঠী মারবো তোমাদেরও গোষ্ঠী মারবো
গোষ্ঠী মারা বাদ দিয়ে একটু ভালোভাবে গেলে ভালো হবে
ভালোই তো যাবো যদি এনিমি গোষ্ঠী মারতে চায় তো ওর গোষ্ঠী আমি মেরে দেবো এনিমি আছে নি
ব্যাপার না এনিমি মারবে
এনিমি কে আছে
এখন পিসিতে মনে হয় হ্যাকার পড়ে না
তুমি যদি হ্যাক লাগাই খেলো তাহলে হ্যাকার পড়বে হ্যাক লাগাই না খেললে হ্যাকার পড়বে না
ওটা না আগে তো পিসি খেললেই পিসি প্লেয়ার দিয়ে খেললেই মগে হ্যাকার পড়ে
হ্যাঁ আমরা আগে খেলতে পারি না ইদানিং কয়েকদিন থেকে ঠিক করছে একটু আগে একজনের নাম আয়া তারপর ওমা সবাই হবে এত ডিসকাউন্ট না এত ডিসকাউন্ট তো আমি চাই না কোথায় নামতেছো তোমরা এই স্নাইপার মারছে আমারে আল্লাহ 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 কুওয়াতা ইল্লা বিল্লাহ আলিয়্যিল আযীম কোথায় মারলো তোমরা যে জায়গায় নামছো না এখানে তো আমারে নিয়ে কুতকুত খেলবে এনিমি
কি হলো কি হলো কোন
কি রে
सारा सद्दे रोमान सारा सद्दे भी ले रहा है भाई 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 भाई
ভাই টোকেন না এখানে একটা আমারে ধরছে ওর স্নাইপার আমারও স্নাইপার আজকে এইবে খেলা মাল্লা লুকায় আছে মাল্লা
ও রিভাইভ দিচ্ছে মনে হয়
না 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 ওই লুকায় আছে
রোমান আর
মারিয়েছি ভাই ওরে মারিয়েছি আর গোষ্ঠী মারছি ঠিক আছে না এটা
Go for the arsenal.
এটা বলে আমার কান্নেডি ছিল মালটার কাছে
I need glue wall.
আর গোষ্ঠী মাইরা দিছি আমি গোষ্ঠী মাইরা দিছি রে
আরেকটা কই দাও
ধর আমি যাচ্ছি ইয়া বাবা তোমরা যত দূরে অত দূরে যাইতে যাইতে আমার সন্ধ্যা হয়ে যাবে গোষ্ঠী মাইরা দে আমার গোষ্ঠী মাইরা দে আপনাদের জাতি জাতি তো এনিমি এরা আমার খাতি দেবে শেষ করে দেবে এনিমি আমার
Enemy spotted! Enemy spotted!
বড় ড্যামেজ দিছি কত 336 ড্যামেজ ধরে মারছি ঠিক আছে গোষ্ঠী
মারে দি সর সুবা হচ্ছে
এই এনিমি আমার কাছে এনিমি আইছে রে বাবা রে আইছে না ভাই
Still on cooldown.
এবার খালি রিভাইভ দিচ্ছে আর কিন্তু মারা খায়
তোমরা কই আমি তোমাদের কাছে চলে আইছি কিডা এনিমি
Capturing the revival point.
এই মাতালাল এনবি মুন্না ভাই তোমার মাতালাল এ বলতে
তো উপরে উঠতেছে রোমা এক নম্বর ওই জায়গায় বুঝু আইতেছে ওয়ান শটার
Capturing the
এই গোষ্ঠী মারছে গোষ্ঠী মারে গেছে, উপায় নাই তো, তোমরা সব টিম মরে গেছো। এখানে গোষ্ঠী মেরে দিয়েছে।
বিগ ফ্যান বাবু ভাই, বিগ ফ্যান, খেলো।
গোষ্ঠী মেরেছে।
Oh man, I should have finished those deep fried chicken wings from last night. I'm starving.
গোষ্ঠী মেরেছে রে মেরেছে, ও গোষ্ঠী মেরেছে, ও গোষ্ঠী মেরেছে রে মেরেছে।
Double kill.
Yeah, my idiot.
Kill. Ugh. Ugh.